next panel, which is the last one of the NMO session, is the panel consisting of panelists from Norway, Kirsten Broch-Mathisen, Brazil, Carlos Nobre, Netherlands, Leen Hordijk, yet another past director, joining me here on the stage. From Indonesia, we don't have a Mr. Kuntoro, but we have a Mr. Wukusko. And that's the composition at this moment here. I would like to apologize to the Korean delegation who had to leave for some emergency yesterday night. Kirsten, it's up to you now to give us first lead to the session.
I have some slides I would like to... So. Yes, today we are faced with the regional and global challenges which are serious. Climate change is, of course, one of the prime examples, but also transnational air pollution, biodiversity loss, food security, the energy issue, the water issue, and not the least the interlinkages between all these challenges. And during these last days, we have heard that new knowledge is needed based on a holistic, integrated approach in order to meet the challenges. We also know that no country can meet these challenges alone. We need international cooperation on knowledge production and research. To meet all these challenges, we need not only international cooperation, we need independent and neutral research of the highest quality. And I'm convinced that IIASA is in a unique position to contribute. And it already plays an important role, and it can play an even more important role in the future. I'm representing the Norwegian NMO, which is the Research Council of Norway. Our main tasks are to be an advisor to the government, finance research, and create arenas for cooperations and knowledge distribution. But not the least, we are supposed to, and we have an important task to promote international cooperation, in particular to address the global challenges. In this context, it has been a benefit for Norway to being a member of IIASA, not only because of that IIASA is performing excellent relevant research, but also that out of, for example, when it comes to the Arctic research, 5 out of 8 members of the Arctic Council are members of IIASA, and so are 7 out of 10 of the Norwegian prioritized cooperation countries outside Europe. So, but still, I think we have a challenge. Because except for very, very few Norwegian scientists, I don't think that Norway takes the advantage of the competence and the opportunities that IIASA offers. I think we should take much more advantage of that opportunities. There's only one scientist, a Norwegian scientist, at IIASA for the moment, and we have hardly any applicants to the young students' summer schools. So, on this background, I have 2 questions from the panel. That is, what regional and global challenges can IIASA's research usefully illuminate in the future. I think that to contribute to the Future Earth initiative is very important. Yesterday, Stephen Wilson from IIASA told us about the Future Earth initiative. We need all the best scientists to contribute, and we need also an integrated approach, which we heard yesterday also from Stephen Wilson. And I think maybe IIASA could create a flagship activity together with a lot of many of the member countries in IIASA. There are already a lot of networks and networks of networks, but I'm sure there is a special role for IIASA with its competence. It's also important from our side that IIASA continues to contribute to the Millennium Goals. Research to fight poverty is important to Norway, and also in the IIASA portfolio. That is only one example. Another example, which is important to Norway, is that is the IIASA's contribution to complex environmental negotiations. For instance, the long-range transboundary air pollution negotiations. That still stands out as a model for how multinational and very complex negotiations can be undertaken with a successful outcome. This should be expanded, we think, to other regions of the world, for example, to Asia. When it comes to the Arctic, which I mentioned earlier, the Arctic is the understanding the changes in the Arctic is very high on our agenda, and I think also for many of the other members of the Council, not only those that are members of the Arctic Council, but also others. In the Arctic, the climate is changing, the ice is melting, the fish stocks are migrating, there are new transportation routes opening, and so all these changes have impacts on the environment and the ecosystems, the living conditions, and I'm sure there is a lot of political issues to discuss. So maybe there is also a role for IIASA in the future as a flagship. And my next question is how to secure the relevance of IIASA's research and that it will be used by decision makers. I think it's most important that IIASA continues to be active in global and regional assessment as you have been, or we have been. I'm a part of that. Like IPCC, the Global Energy Assessment, and also the long-range transboundary air pollution negotiations, as I mentioned, and others. But I think it's also important to improve the dialogue with the NMOs, both on the agenda setting and on the dissemination of the results. I believe there are some opportunities there, and not the least to continue educating the next generation of scientists, maybe even expand that to other initiatives, because those will be the next generation of professors and also decision makers. And be sure that IIASA is visible. I think there is a potential there. So, this is my 2 questions for the panel. So I hope we will get some ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Carlos, would you like to respond to this challenge?
Yes. Brazil is also a new member, relatively new member since 2011, so I can see a lot of possibilities for Brazil to collaborate with IIASA in many areas and has been, in fact, collaborating, particularly in energy assessments. But I will really focus my analysis on one issue that concerns me and many in this audience, including the current director of IIASA, which is the development of the global tropics, sustainable development. So in the wake of Rio Plus 20, the future we want, let me just draw your attention to the future I want. And I will start by making my conclusions. So in my conclusions, I would like really to see me sitting in the audience in the Golden Jubilee of IIASA in 10 years' time, 5th anniversary. And then a session on sustainability in the tropics would conclude that deforestation was halted in all global tropics at 30%. And in fact, most tropical countries at that time, in 10 years' time, would have seen that there are other ways of developing the global tropics without removing the forests. So that's my conclusion, and I think IIASA can play a very important role in that. So along the interests already demonstrated here by Professor Ibrahim from Malaysia, and Brazil is also very interested, I'm sure Indonesia as well, in seeing how IIASA can play a fundamental role in changing, in bringing about the strength of IIASA, the tools of system analysis, the tremendous intellectual power of IIASA at this moment to think of new concepts for the tropics. I think it's very clear, and the empirical evidence would tell you that the current model of development for the tropics in the last 50 years, and this is a good warning for the Arctic nations, I mean, don't follow that route. Don't follow that route. It's unsustainable. It has led to 28% of destruction of the forests, tropical forests. It's an environmental disaster, economic failure, at least I can say that for the Amazon forests, and also really did not lead to major substantial poverty alleviation. So we have to change. We have to radically change. So what we need really is new concepts. We need really to think outside of the box, as many people are saying here. The IIASA has to think outside of the box, out of the box. And that really means putting some stronger constraints to existing models. So we are not happy only in describing or developing the concepts, testing rigorously of a bio-based economy for the tropics, which might, for instance, be replacing all the forests with bioenergy, biofuels, etc., etc. I think the real constraint we have to put for the development of the tropics is a standing forest-based economy. There are a lot of empirical evidence showing that the greatest economic value in the tropics is biodiversity. So when replaces the forest with grass or even with palm oil and many other things, we are really decreasing by a factor of several thousand biodiversity. So you're really losing the possibility of using biodiversity. So, but we don't know how to use biodiversity. So I think IIASA, the way I see IIASA developing a program for the tropical countries, with the tropical countries' participation in the way I liked very much what Adil said, this co-development and many other contributions would be really a cross-cutting project for IIASA with the idea of developing this new model for the tropics, testing this new model. So this is really thinking out of the box, and I'm very hopeful that IIASA will take that challenge, which is not really breaking these very important rules of being independent and neutral. Science is neutral, but it's really thinking ahead and seeing how this strength of IIASA can be brought to bear with a very important question for the future of the planet, which is the sustainability of the global tropics. Thank you very much.
As the IIASA director, I think I'm extremely pleased with these very specific and concrete calls which are coming from these NMO countries, Arctic, tropics. Thank you again, Carlos. This is a very, very fundamental comment. Together with Indonesia, which is coming next, and Malaysia, we certainly will step up and try to investigate how we can take up this challenge. Indonesia, briefly, please.
I'd like to begin by saying thank you and what a great honor it is for me to be speaking here representing my country, Indonesia, not only because of Indonesia being one of the most junior member of IIASA. Well, we wanted to be the most junior, but Andrew came at the last minute of the council meeting and made it to be the most junior. But also because of me being, I think, one of the most junior in my existence on Earth to be here. But I'm delivering the message that my boss, my professor, Kuntoro Magusubroto, who heads this unit that I'm working on as a deputy, it's a unit linked to the Office of the President of the Republic, President's Delivery Unit for Development Monitoring and Oversight. And he himself also is the council member of IIASA from Indonesia, who chairs the National Committee of Indonesia for IIASA. I'm conveying again his apology for not being able to come here because this weekend he needs to fly with the President to London. I'd like to reiterate again why there is such a need for Indonesia to be a member of IIASA, being represented by a figure like Professor Kuntoro, an academician in the country, a trusted figure, at the same time also a senior advisor to the President on issue that is strategic to national development. And therefore, it is the kind of role that Indonesia needs support from IIASA. I'll give you an illustration of what is happening. Indonesia is a country that is undergoing twofold transition, democratization and decentralization. We are now the third largest democracy in the world, but we are also now a country that runs decentralized. The power of the central government is being devolved to the hands of about 500 plus head of districts in the whole country. So you can imagine what sort of challenge, both from the political perspective as well as in governance perspective, to make policy happen and work well. An example is the statement from the President himself, and he said, we want to achieve 10 million tons of rice surplus production by 2014. You know, in a democracy, there are usually three kind of commodities whose price can bring down the government. One is the price of gasoline, two is electricity, and three is, for a country like Indonesia, who consumes 130 kilograms of rice per capita per year, is the price of rice. So it was very politically important that such a message was given. But again, in the execution and design of that kind of policy, it is very difficult because you have to know where the lands are. How is the irrigation system that is required for that? How is the distribution system? So it's a complex system that will define whether the end goal, whether the political statement being given by the President can reach the target. And therefore, our unit, chaired by Mr. Kuntoro, decided that we have to tackle this from the perspective of science and how to bring together people from the science side, people from academia, and policymakers. Here you see a diagram showing how academia in various communities, private sectors, as well as policymakers in the government should meet in a public space. discuss issues that are of importance for the country and come up with a solution. Professor Kabat himself was, I think, was a witness and also an actor in one of the agenda that we did earlier this year, just before our membership, where we brought people from the Ministry of Research and Technology, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, to come together, have a discussion on the issue of green economy. We also brought in another opportunity, people to discuss about this issue of price of rice and rice surplus. So that Ministry of Agriculture, for example, right now, is deciding their policy on food sustainability on the basis of systems modeling approach being assisted by academia. And I'd like to take this issue from the national level into a global issue that is of concern to everybody, especially also to countries like Brazil and Indonesia and also to some extent Malaysia. That is the issue of sustainability. One is the issue of forests and the needs for forest sustainability, like this decided by Francis Seymour yesterday. I think it's a great invitation that Indonesia should work together with Brazil and Malaysia to tackle this. Kuntoro himself is also chair of the task force and RED Plus in the country. So it's a great link, again, to bridge between IIASA and the tropical world to solve the matters. And at last, also because of the president of Indonesia right now, has been recently assigned by the Secretary General of the United Nations to chair the high-level panel on post-2015 Millennium Development Goal, together with Prime Minister David Cameron and President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And this is, again, an opportunity for policy to be shaped with an approach of system analysis being supported by the strong hand of IIASA. With that, I'd like to thank everybody and would like to extend our hand to work together to solve the problem. Thank you.
I think these are really exciting opportunities for having our contributions. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Leen Hoordijk, who of course can speak to many of these things, to conclude the session by his remarks.
Thank you, Pavel. In the remaining minus 1.27 minutes, I'll try and be brief. I'm very happy to be here. My first encounter was in 1978. So since then, I've been working as a scientist and as a council member and as a director. And I'll try from that perspective, including the perspective of the Netherlands, where I haven't lived in the last 9 years, but still I will try to respond to Kirsten's questions on networks and how to improve the relationship between the NMOs and the IIASA itself. Let me start by seeing 3 different levels of networks: global, European Union, which might not surprise you because I'm working there now, and the Netherlands. And globally, I think what Kirsten said is a very good idea to have close interactions with Future Earth. Also because IIASA has been involved in the current and almost ending programs like IGBP, IHDP, WCP, and Diversitas. Lots of abbreviations, but most of you will recognize them. So we had all these inputs in these programs, and I think we shall continue to be very helpful in working with Future Earth. For the European Union, I'd like to stress that still quite a few of the NMOs are in Europe and are a member of the European Union or closely collaborating, like Norway is doing. Impact assessment is a major part of the European Union's way of assessing policies, and already some of the IIASA programs, especially ecosystem services and management and mitigation, air pollution and climate change or greenhouse gases, are working. But I think more can be done, because there the integration of economic, social and environmental issues come together. Of course, in the next few years, there will be a great opportunity to further intensify the collaboration between European scientists and IIASA in general, because the Horizon 2020 program, which was supposed to be Framework Program 8, but the Commissioner wanted another name, but it's basically Framework Program 8, will bring lots of opportunities for collaborative research that will link the IIASA's more applied research with the more fundamental research in the universities and research institutes across the continent. For the Netherlands, there's a lot of bilateral interactions going on between IIASA scientists and universities, research institutes, and incidentally, now and then also with the ministry. And those of you who walk the corridor back here might have seen the statement by the Dutch NMO that says, thank you IIASA, because we used your gains model, made it a Dutch gains model as well, and we're testing all kinds of policies at the Dutch level when we are dealing with our counterparts in Europe, but also at the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. Outreach is important, has always been important, but when I was director, I always said it's a joint effort. It's not just us, NMO, pointing to IIASA, you should do better in outreaching to us. It's a task of the NMOs as well. And I discussed that with the current council member, Professor Jos Engelen, that the Netherlands should also do a better job there, bringing more YSSP candidates to the institute, being better in providing postdoc candidates, and in general being more active. And the NMO has promised, and I can reveal that to you, to organize it in a more effective way so that there is more of a stream of IIASA researchers also coming. Finally, there was a lot of saying about GEA, the Global Energy Assessment. I'd like to refer to another GEA that I've been part of, which is the Global Environmental Assessment that was initiated by the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, where some very relevant results came out, which I will refer to in a session later this afternoon. But there's 3 buzzwords, I think, that IIASA should always remember. You do credible science, that's obvious for the scientists. But from the use of science, there's 2 other buzzwords. That the science shall be legitimate, namely that it's unbiased, it's fair, it's balanced, it's participatory, it's respectful of views of others, it includes knowledge, and it's also salient, namely that it's relevant and timely. With these 3 things together, I think the work of IIASA will reach even more policies, makers, business people, and also the common people in the street. At the end, congratulations from the Netherlands on your 40th anniversary. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you again to our countries, our panelists. We have been overrunning time, but I think the NMO statements, the NMO positions and the discussion was so important that there was no way to cut it down.